Drive haven't started yet, we're still making it up.
Just put the on-air sticker on the door.
Yeah, like a red light flashing, content gold being created.
When the real bullshit flows, you'll know. So welcome to Evo podcast episode 21. I'm reliably informed. I've been away for a few of them. Dickie stood in for our, if you haven't listened to it yet, I recommend you do. The special we did with Richard Rackman, Julian Thompson and Matt Beckett on the birth of the S1 Elise, which was a fascinating thing to listen to.
Yeah, it's a fun one to do.
Made me want to buy one. Thankfully, I was driving at the time, so I couldn't search Auto Trader. But
yeah, we're all doing that now, aren't we?
Yeah, it sounded fascinating, doesn't it? Even though you were there when it was conceived, as it were, sort of followed it from its launch, it's still great to hear.
Yeah, I think
everything
they're
that goes
really
on in the
cool as well.
background,
Like they're so fresh in their minds when you think how many other things they've done. It's obviously as special for them as it was for everyone else. So no, it's great fun talking to them.
Yeah, no, it was great. And when you weren't sat in Capri and Machine, who Dickie forgot to thank on the day, so thank you, Phil.
I thought that would have been clear from the amount of noise going on in the background. But,
what else have you been up to since you recorded that? It's been quite busy.
It's been a month or so since we last spoke, so obviously I've driven another Pagani, Stu. It's part of my Evo rider. So, no, a couple of weeks ago now, I drove out to Spa for Pagani do this thing called Art in Pista, which is their customer track days in their track-only cars. So before they held these events officially, they did the Zonda R, which was their first track-only car, which I think, John, did you drive it?
Yeah, I think that was at Dunsfold.
Glamorous.
Not really.
And then there was an Evo version of that, and then they did a Huayra R, and now they've done a Huayra R Evo Roadster, or Revo Roadster, as they would call it. So longer tail, all new body, new tub, a new version of the engine. So although the Huayra road cars have a twin-turbo V12, this has got a naturally aspirated HWA V12, so the motorsport side of AMG. So there's not, I think they're in the same building, but there isn't really any exchange of hardware there. So amazing thing. 900 horsepower, and it weighs 1150 kilos, I think, dry.
And what's it like round Spa?
It's pretty. I mean, it's an absolutely epic thing. But it was interesting because I'd never driven the car before, hadn't driven at Spa for a while, and then you sort of think, hang on a minute, it's a 900 horsepower, 1150 kilo car, and I'm basically going to get a bit of a session on a sim and then jump in the car, which is kind of a big test of the car's suitability for the breadth of driving experience that it has with their customers. But it was really impressive, like the way the car is design and set up. I'd always thought, why would you spend this 3.85 million euros plus taxes?
Plus.
So it's a ton of money. Well, they're only making 35 of them. But I'd always thought, if you're going to if you've got all that money, why would you not just hire a track and buy an LMP2 car or something and get a team to run that? But racing cars aren't designed to just be jumped in and have a 40-minute session and then jump out and jump back. They're kind of more temperamental, sharper, less friendly things.
Yeah.
And this Pagani is so friendly, so much more approachable, and everything's tuned just to help you drive the car and get the most from the car and the most from you. So it sort of seems like a subtle distinction, but it's a totally different way of going about it, I think.
And how close does it always feel to a road car? Does it get anywhere close to feeling like a race car?
It's sort of somewhere between the two, actually, because it's slightly, like the look of it, it's very obviously Pagani, and it's slightly soft compared to a racing car because it's not purely brutally functional. So you kind of approach it in a slightly different way, and the interior is really nicely trimmed. It's sort of pared back from a regular road car, but again, it's quite easy to get into. It's comfortable. Everything's very obvious and not intimidating. So you do get into it in a quite a different frame of mind. And the way it's been designed drivetrain wise, so it's got no clutch pedal at all, and there's a drive button that you press, and then that engages this electronic clutch. So you then just come off the brake, squeeze into the throttle, and it manages the clutch for you. So again, no embarrassing stalls. It means that there's less wear on the clutch. So 10,000 kilometre service intervals, I think, for the engine, gearbox and clutch, which is, I think, the Huayras have done like 3 seasons and they're on about 5,000 Ks.
Okay.
So it's a long time
Yeah.
between opening it up. So everything's been really, really well thought out.
Who was at the event? Because it was a Pagani customer event, so it's an opportunity if you are a customer of these cars.
Yeah, there were
Pagani run them.
6 or 7 cars. They were all Huayra Rs. The Revo Roadster was the only one that was there for myself and 3 other members of the media, and they had some other media there second day. So yeah, it's very chilled actually. They either have completely exclusive days, but with Spa, I think there's only 4 effectively unsilenced days a year, and they had 2 back to back.
Yeah.
With a company called Curbstone, which I think Stefan Rattel, the GT Supremo dude, runs that. So they were alternate sessions. So the Pagani sessions were purely only Paganis running on track, and then everyone else was running in the other sessions. So they either do it like that or a completely bespoke private day. Yeah. But it worked really, really well. I just need to be a billionaire now.
Oh yeah, damn me all. And how you went over in RM5 touring long term?
I did, yeah. Aston and I bombed over there.
What's that like? Because we've done obviously the twin tests and the comparisons here in the UK and stuff. What's it like for actually? That's probably more the job it's designed to do.
It's absolutely the purpose of that car, isn't it?
Yeah.
To fill it up with stuff and then drive for 6 hours. I don't know. I'm a bit undecided about it actually. It was really effective, but I think I caught you and Ev chatting about it. There's so much configurability, and you can really bring the car, like bring out the sort of M character in the car. But if you don't do that, it's actually quite flat.
Quite like a Porsche 5 Series.
But
not as good as the 550 we had as a long term in the previous gen.
It's probably less capable of the things you want a big, comfortable estate car to do. I feel a bit of a traitor for saying this because we should celebrate these cars, but if you had a gauge of how much of all that, 800 horsepower or whatever it's got, 700 and something horsepower, how much you're actually using, it would be so far away from noticing any difference really. That, I mean, I should say it got a massive amount of attention. Like Aston and I are we on fire or something? There were like people pulling alongside and taking pictures, and there were some Brits that followed us and were waving, and there are locals in France, and it gets so much attention. And I think when you see it, particularly rear 3/4, it's a really impressive, like you cannot
miss it.
Yeah. So it does make a statement, and I think it's, in that sense, I think it's great that the M badge carries a bit of kudos now. I think people know it probably for its ridiculous curb weight, but also for all the tech in it and the power and the performance. And I think I need to drive it again, sort of a normal drive rather than a big epic mission. But yeah, I don't know. It sort of highlights the slight pointlessness of some of the performance it offers, and I don't know how many people would take enough time to really configure the settings. And
I've had it for week 10 days. I just found if you configure it, you very rarely find yourself on the right road or scenario where you can enjoy what you've just configured, because it is so big and the roads aren't big enough, and you don't get that long enough stretch for it to settle into what it's been designed to do. I think
when we drove to Spa, you just back everything off and you're just in kind of efficiency mode, but then you get a brief kind of moment where you want to feel the performance and open it up and then settle back down. But you're not going to... I know there's the M1 and M2 buttons, but they're never quite in the mode you want them either somehow. So, I don't know, sound like an old man shaking my fist at the sky. But it's a very cool car. I think people notice it and are excited by it. But yeah, the reality of it is slightly confused, I think, by the nature of the powertrain. I think it's just an inevitable consequence of trying to combine two very disparate targets, aren't they? Well, it's got to be efficient and acceptable, and then on the other hand, it's got to be a bit of a headbanger. And they never quite meshes particularly well, I don't think.
No, so it's running an RS6 as well. The RS6, you just get in it, and you know exactly what it is from when you're in it. You don't really need to, once you've turned off the lane departure warnings and speed limit warnings and things like that, you don't need to keep jumping in and out of configurations. It just feels like an RS6 every time you're in it, whereas the M5 just felt you're either in a 5 Series or you then press M1 or M2 or configure something, and then you're in an M5. But
it's like it's playing a role, isn't it? It's like an actor that sort of have to improvise. All right, improvise sports car, and then improvise comfortable, refined, efficient, and that's all quiet and a bit bland. And
it's like Tom Hardy in Legend, isn't it? Played both Cray brothers in the same scene.
Yeah, that would be more exciting, probably.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't be allowed to because he's an Audi man. James, that's enough of Dickie's exploits into Spa. You've also been overseas for another circuit, but something slightly less useful for driving a long distance in.
Certainly a bit less luggage space. Yeah, no, I've driven the Aston Martin Valkyrie from Silverstone, Aston Martin's F1 factory, to Le Mans. Reason being, Aston Martin's entered Le Mans this year with 2 racing Valkyries, so it was a timely moment to revisit the road car, and it's, as far as I know, it's the longest journey any media probably will ever undertake in that car, because we did more than 700 miles in the end, because we didn't go as the crow flies. And to break the fourth wall for a moment, when you're shooting a road trip feature for a magazine, you don't just drive there. Obviously, you drive around in circles and back and forth a lot. So
you do, because you get lost.
I do, yeah, that's true.
That was just trying to get out of Silverstone.
Yeah.
Going up and down the dual carriageway.
I'm just trying to think, did I do? No, I did it, actually. I did,
of course you got lost, James. Don't try and hide it. Of course you got lost. How's your hearing?
You'll have to speak up, so I can't hear you very well. It's very, very loud. So obviously, famously, Cosworth V12, probably one of the greatest engines that's ever been engineered, but it's bolted. It's a stressed member of the car, so it's bolted to the back of the chassis with sort of 4 studs. So it's a bit like you're wearing the engine as a backpack. Yeah. All of the sound and the vibration goes through the tub, and because it's so tightly packaged, you're basically a part of the tub. You become a part of the car in more ways than one when you drive a Valkyrie. And you get these, they're actually military grade helicopter headphones to wear while you drive it, with an intercom system if you've got a passenger. And
does it play lounge music or something?
You can hook up your phone, but I had the volume on maximum and I could barely hear the music coming through. And just out of interest, I took one sort of can off my ear. I literally winced and sort of crammed it back onto my lug as quickly as I could, because it's
like being in the middle of a machine shop or something.
Yeah, it's like being in an industrial threshing mill or something. And the ironic thing is, it doesn't sound very nice on the inside. It's an incredible sounding car on the outside, but on the inside, you get all the industrial end of it.
Yeah, you get that, just the resonance, don't you? It just sits in the cabin. And what was it actually like, though? I mean, it's not designed to do that drive at all, but as an experience, though, I mean, these guys getting papped in a blue 5 Series estate car. What was it like driving I think Aston sent me a picture. He said, this looks like Batman's car. It's just, and it was a drone shot. Actually, it's in the.
It was a great image.
It was a great shot, yeah, and it just looks fantastic on the road, because it looks totally out of place. Even though we've seen them on the road of Gordon Ramsay driving his and Gregor Fiskin and all those sort of that have been delivered, Alonso's and stuff. But to see it in those photos on just normal environment, it looked wild. What was the reaction like? I imagine what the reaction was like actually, but.
Yeah, I've never driven a car that gets as much attention as the Valkyrie. Obviously, we drive some pretty wild stuff in this job, but wherever you are, the most rural bit of French countryside, the moment you stop, there are 30 people around the car.
Which is quite stressful, isn't it? Actually?
It's really stressful,
It's exciting, and it goes with part of your job, I'm sure, if you own one of those cars, isn't it? You're out there. Either you want the attention or you're just pleased that the car is still able to make people excited. But it is quite hard work, isn't it, when you just want to get in and drive?
Especially if you're trying to do a cornering shot, or you're trying to do a tricky, where it's not a 3-point turn, because the turning circle's quite big, a 7-point turn.
Yeah, you got a photographer. Come on, lights going. Can you just turn it round quickly?
Yeah. Well, you normally have to drive a kilometre down the road to find somewhere safe to turn around, because the floor is, full of delicate aerodynamic surfaces. You can't just turn around on a bit of gravel like you would in a road car. But I sound like I'm being very negative. It is one of the most incredible driving experiences I've ever had on the right bit of road. So it's not showing the car in its best light doing a journey like that, because doing motorway drudgery is not what it was designed for. But we found some really nice rural roads in northern France, roads I didn't think existed in that bit of France. And it's incredible, because I thought it would feel like a racing car on the road and have really, really firm suspension, be really compromised. Because it has this incredibly clever active suspension for the aero, because obviously aerodynamics is key. The key thing is keeping the ride height as consistent as you can.
Stable platform.
That's right. Indeed. but
I guess it's proportionate to whatever load you're generating, so it doesn't really support if you're not doing the speed.
In fact, it's so clever. to be really nerdy for a moment, Michelin gave Aston Martin figures for what the tyre load was, so it would develop maximum downforce up to tyre load and then bleed it back when it knows it's overloading the tyres. But the upshot is it works really well on a bumpy country road, which is not what I was expecting. I thought it would feel, like a Le Mans car or something and be bouncing all over the place. It can cycle up anything you put at it. And in the mirror, well, it actually doesn't have mirrors, it has cameras instead of mirrors. In the screens, I could see this huge rooster tail of dust because it's got these huge channels under the car. And, even at the sort of speeds you're driving up the road, they were still active. Yeah. And yet there were some pretty gnarly lumps and bumps, and it was just taking everything. And the steering's beautiful. It's got this lovely measured steering. It's loads of feel, but it's not nervous. And the thing I really took from it is you sort of get out what you put into it. The limits are so high, but I didn't feel like I was just ballast, like I was just turning the wheel and pressing the pedals and I was just a passenger. You really feel like you're the one driving the car. It's like a Lotus or a Caterham or something, but crossed with an LMP1 prototype.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it looked amazing. There's a film coming out on that as well, isn't there?
There is,
you've done.
Yes.
So looking forward to that.
Yeah, that should go live just before the Le Mans race itself. Yes. So same week as the 24-hour.
Yeah, so if all goes to plan, be week after this goes out.
Indeed, yes.
If we get this edited in time. Which we will. We're not busy at the moment. John, what have you been up to?
Well, it just reminded me of the experience I've had with an engine bolted directly to the chassis, because I drove the original Atom.
Yeah,
of course, yes.
Yeah. Which it's only a K series, but you certainly know you're next to the engine and it's solidly mounted, don't you? So yeah, I drove that car, I think it was back in 99 or 2000 when it first came out. They took it to Donington Park on a cold November day.
I'd forgotten it was a K series actually, so long ago, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just assume the Honda connection was so strong.
It was. It came along quite quickly, but the first lot were, I think the maximum was 200 horsepower on a VH PD engine. And of course, when they got the hookup with Honda, which was quite remarkable for a little company in Somerset to get the nod and have engines direct from Japan. But yeah, getting back into the original, and it's still a remarkable car to be in. It's probably just as remarkable as being in the Valkyrie, because you can see so much. It's like driving a cutaway car, isn't it? Still, after all this time, you get in one, and it's nippy. It felt better balanced than the very first one. But they found this car. They had to pay more than they sold it for all these years later. But Ariel put it back on their fleet with a set of better tyres on it. So that was quite a good experience. The other one was mentioning Michelin. I went to Le Doux in Clermont-Ferrand. I've been there quite a few times with JLR, actually. JLR didn't use any Michelin tyres, but we used to go there to sign off stability control on Jaguar and Land Rover products. Just hired the circuit. So it's the first time I've been there as a guest of Michelin, but it was actually guest of Porsche, because they created this tyre for the GT3 RS. There's a gap because there's Cup 2 and there's Cup 2R, or there's a winter tyre. And none of those really suit our conditions. They did talk about it as their created tyre for the UK market, like when it's wet. So they created this tyre with Porsche, which is supposed to be better in the wet. So they had 3 GT3 RSs, and we got to drive behind your Bergmeister, who's pretty handy, on the wet circuit, and he was on the new tyre and I was on the original. And we'd been here before, because Car of the Year, when the GT3 RS won, it was on Cup 2s. Yeah. So we know it's still okay. Yeah. I was doing okay. I knew the circuit. I was doing okay behind Jörg, but he was just soft pedalling. And then I got in the car with the new tyre, which looks like a regular tyre.
It's based on a Sport 5S or S5, whatever
it's a fairly conventional looking tread pattern, and it was 10 seconds a lap quicker.
10 seconds.
Around a 1 minute 30 lap.
Done a Cup 2.
And it felt amazing. You really felt like you just switched to a set of racing wets.
That's nuts.
It is nuts. And then we were trying to dodge the rain, because it was just on the cusp of raining, and they got a dry handling circuit, which is quite a clever circuit, because each corner gets slightly quicker. So it's really easy to get in your head, really easy to test the tyre. and it was almost as fast as the Cup 2.
Wow.
Because the Cup 2 was just on the cusp of its operating temperature, and this was just about to go out of its operating temperature. So, and the wear on it was amazing, because you expect to see it all cut up.
Yeah.
Nope. It looks really durable. So that should be going on sale, and I think it's such a good bit of design. They should roll it out for a few other.
Yeah, I was going to say, are they able to take that learning and offer it onto within the 911 family, regular GT3s, anything that can come with a Cup 2, but also outside of Porsche stuff?
I was going to say a few M products would benefit from that kind of time.
Well, I think there might be a bit of this is Porsche and Michelin investing and creating something together, but they must have, they must come up with an optimised.
How have they achieved that?
It's compound.
So it's a lot of Cup 2 compound mixed with S5 compound, and
it's finding that balance, isn't it? I don't know how they've done it. I mean, Michelin is a very secretive company, and we got to see a little bit of their tech. And one of the things they said was they only patent something if you can see it. If it's in the tyre, they're not going to let people know by patenting it. They can scan tyres that have been on test, so they don't have to cut them up and then break the structure. Yeah. They can scan them and look inside the tyre, see how the bead's doing, the support, the wires and what have you. So
wow.
It's really, really
Seems
clever.
like that must have been a surprise to them. I can't imagine they said, right, it's going to be 10 seconds, that's our target. They must have been pretty surprised, I would think.
It was pretty mad.
And there must be some crossover, a lot of learnings they've taken from WEC, because those cars can run in quite wet conditions on those slicks still, can't they, when you see them running at Le Mans without a drop-off
I know F1 is Pirelli, isn't, but you look at like the conditions they'll run in intermediate.
Yeah, they either sort of ignore intermediate.
And I know probably in our heads we're thinking an old school Inter that was very much, more like a cut slick, but even so, there's some really mad stuff going on, isn't there? Clearly, in how they keep the tyre going and
So you could, if in the UK you run a 992 GT3 RS on that new Michelin tyre all year round and track days.
I think it's an all-season tyre.
Yeah.
You don't have to swap it when you get to the test track or the track day that you're going to do. It just seems the perfect tyre for the UK, and I think it's going to be sold through the Manthey people here in the UK. Yeah. So it should be on sale. I don't think it's going to be cheap, but then Cup 2s and Cup 2 Rs are not cheap. So yeah, it was a real surprising visit.
Interesting.
Worth a look.
And a little birdie tells us that something's happened with the Capri.
Who have you been talking to?
Your bank account manager. You asked for advance payment.
Yes. It's... can I say the words? It's going to be finished this summer.
No.
Well, you are aware this is going out in 2025, aren't you?
Oh, okay. So we got... the starting issue has been resolved. I've written about that. Power steering has been changed from unsatisfactory H-Pass to an E-Pass system from MST, the Mark 1 Wizards in Wales. And now it's stripped bare metal. Well, the last time I saw it, it was stripped to bare metal. I've paid some money since then, so hopefully it's not still in bare metal. And it should be done in the next few days. But it's not just being repainted. It was kept under a car cover, and in all weathers, and that's not the thing to do. It's probably safer to keep the car just exposed because the water sticks under the surface of the cover. And then, it's back to metal. Going to be resprayed black, but we're resetting the front wings. He's always had this sort of frown to the face, and others I've seen are like quite. So that's being solved. Heated front screen, flocked dashboard. Q-Prep, who are doing all the work, come up with all these ideas. Oh, we could do this, or we could do that. And they're just looking at my bank balance. So, but if you're going to have it apart, you might as well put it back together the best it can be.
So this is, for those that are maybe new to this, 23 years in the making?
2003, wasn't it? Well, that's when Well, it's probably before that, because my Caterham... So we had this Ed-to-Ed project car challenge, didn't we? So you went for a V8 Capri, I went for a 5-blade engine Caterham, and that was registered. It was an 03 plate, so we must have started it in 02.
I think it was supposed to be finished before my eldest was born.
So it's finished just as he's finishing university and starting work.
Well, he's been in work a couple of years now. he's now well on with his career. He's 23, so the Capri is 24.
Wow.
And he's working at VBox, Race Logic, and absolutely having a ball. And he always thought that was going to be his inheritance, but it might not be for a while.
When he can inherit the
bill.
You
spent his inheritance on it.
Yeah.
So can we expect that at an Evo track day this year?
Yes, absolutely.
Which one? Come on.
I'm not sure.
Goodwood, September.
Yeah.
It's going to need a new set of tyres.
That's right.
Because the tyres that are on it are
24 years old.
2011 tyres.
We can sort tyres. Come on, Goodwood in September, yeah?
Yeah, okay.
So if you want to see this Capri, book your slot.
It's a nice low jeopardy circuit as well. So
you can just not at all dangerous.
Shake it down.
Period circuit for a period car.
Yeah.
Well, on that exciting news, should we have a quick break and then we'll come back and talk about the 1990s?
And we'll tell you what's in these mysterious...
And we'll tell you what's in the mysterious silver Ignates that John has brought. Probably bits of Capri, I imagine.
So that's to pay for the next...
they're £50 each, so help yourself.
Right, we'll see you in a short while. Welcome back to part 2 of episode 21 of the Evo podcast. Did you get it right?
Yeah, that's good.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah, you're getting the hang of this now.
Yeah, nearly there. So this month we did part 2 of our Evo Eras series. Part 1 was the 1980s. Part 2 was the 90s, which... we were all there for the 90s. James was probably still at school. But you two, Dickie, John, you were on that and doing much of the logistics and driving.
Yeah.
Both when they were new and now 30 years later. So list of cars that we had there.
Okay.
So this, you won't remember because you're old.
Well, let's see if we it'll be a test. The hardest one of all to get hold of was the Clio 16 valve. By far. I'm sure there's fewer of those in a roadworthy condition than any other.
Yeah, probably fewer than
cars.
There are Williams, because the Williams is a collectible.
Yeah.
So that's part of these eras tests. Is it would be very easy just to go back through all the ones that we've featured very heavily throughout, from when they were new, and then every now and again since probably. But we wanted it to be more of a true snapshot of that decade and maybe the cars that more people spent more time in, rather than the halo cars that everyone remembers but possibly not so many people drove. So obvious alternative to the Williams is the 16 valve, and I think we were quite curious. You spent a lot of time in one as a long termer, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, black one.
I'd never spent that much time in one. So
Didn't the current Mrs. Meaden, or she's the only Mrs. Meaden?
Yeah, hopefully.
She had a company car, didn't she?
She had a phase 2 company car. So we went for phase 1 with the sort of more like turbine wheels in the blue, which is how whenever I think of a Clio 16 valve, it's always in that spec. Need to thank Richard Tipper for getting hold of that. Actually, he's the oracle when it comes to finding rare cars. So that was one of them. Elise S1.
Yep.
Another obvious one maybe, but it wasn't like the early car with MMC brakes, and it wasn't a special edition car either. It was like the kind of bread and butter. Yeah. 118 horsepower lease. So that was another cracker. What else did we have, John? Griff 500.
Griff 500, which they're always great looking things. That is such a great design. It's just stood the test of time.
I was stunned actually. You sort of think the car, like you don't need to look at it again because seen them hundreds of times, but when it arrived, it was a friend of Yusuf's that let us borrow the car, and bloody hell, it looks good. It looks so good.
Yeah.
So clean, and you see all these clever little bits in the design where they hid awkward kind of shut lines and hinges, and it's really neat. And then such a clean nothing extra, is there? It's like very confident. Like the headlight covers are just the perfect elliptical shape.
And the rear number plate light is behind the plate.
Yeah.
So they kept it as clean as possible. And the interior still looks great. It's a really nice bit of design.
No, gorgeous thing.
They are lovely. When you
thing.
see them on the road, particularly this time of year now, they're all coming out. You think, oh, that's it.
This was a slightly later car, so power steering.
Yeah,
which I think makes a big.
Yeah.
It comes with its own slight shortcomings compared to past now, but I think it makes it a nicer car than non-power steering.
It's quite subtle.
What else do we have? F355.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was loud.
Sounded amazing. Looked amazing.
Yeah.
That was a really hard car to find as well. Actually, another one.
Was that manual or F1?
Well,
it was manual.
That was why we wanted F1, just because that was the first Ferrari to have it, and it was pushed quite a lot by the factory and by.
But so few people had them, I think, because it was a cost option, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
We're so used to manuals now being a cost option and paddles being standard. But where John looked and looked and looked, I looked and looked and looked, and quite a few people I know that I thought still had them, they've all simultaneously decided now's the time that they were going to get them restored. So they're obviously at that tipping point where they need the work and they're probably worth enough to justify it, and they will, I think, continue to be even more cherished, I think, as cars, because they are so pretty and they sound.
That one particularly.
Probably the last genuinely beautiful, genuinely great sounding Ferrari. Probably a little bit contentious, but just a sweet, not that horrible, heavily valved kind of noise when they fire up. It just. And super revvy and just a sweet car, that wasn't it?
Because that was that iconic performance car front cover, wasn't it? F35, just want one. I think when you saw that on the newsstand when it came through, you were like, still want one there. But that just made me think, hang on, what's this about? Because we had 348 beforehand.
Yeah, 355 just righted so many wrongs, didn't it? Not just in the way it looks, but 5-valve cylinder, 370 odd horsepower engine as well. So they did a lot of good stuff, made the gearshift work properly. Yeah, they might have been provoked into that slightly by the arrival of the Honda NSX, which made everything mid-engine seem that much easier.
We considered putting an NSX in the test. There was a lot of debate on which cars to include.
The 80s group kind of not selected itself, but it just felt right, didn't it? The balance of cars that we had, and the 90s, we had the sort of long list was long, huge, really long, and they would all have been great, and again, really distinct characters, but we try and keep it a wieldy, sort of half a dozen cars is kind of optimum, really.
Yeah, we might not have managed that in subsequent tests.
No, sorry, Dean. But I think trying to whittle it down is difficult, but I think.
But as we've said, it's not about these are the definitive best cars. They are a snapshot of the era.
It's a cross section.
It's a cross section.
You realise how much went on as well, particularly because as will emerge when more of the eras come out. But Peter Tomlin, whose idea it was to do this in the first place, wanted a sort of control car, didn't he, that was present throughout, which is the 911. So we had a 3.2 Carrera in the 80s, but for 90s we could have had a 964, 993 or 996, and it was really, there's pros and cons to each, and I'm still not sure. I mean, in the end we went for a very, very early 996 Carrera 3.4. Thank you, Neil, for letting us borrow your car, and part of me would have loved to see a 993 there. But then it would have been an equally big jump to go from 993 to what do you do in the following decade? Because then you've still skipped probably 3 generations of car. So
some of the cars not included, wasn't it? You think include a 996, but we didn't have a Boxster, which arguably is more significant for Porsche at the time.
Absolutely.
But the 911.
But you could have had a 968 Club Sport or a 968 Sport. Or you could have had a 928 as a quirky to show what Porsche did in that period. But they went from that weird portfolio of cars down to 911, didn't they, in a very short order. And then they kind of regrouped and started again, didn't they? But have we forgotten any? Was that
the
it?
Subaru
RB5.
Oh, of course.
The RB5.
RB5. which is a great thing as well.
Yeah.
That was the thing. They were all so different, all completely different. The one that really surprised me, even though I had a long-termer, was the 16-valve clear. Because we were on some nice Welsh roads, and I've driven down that road in lots of stuff. And the 16-valve clear was probably as good as much fun as anything. Because you just drive it on the front end, and the back just stays where it needs to be. So it's really, really good fun.
I think you only notice, and you know all this stuff, but I'd kind of forgotten it as well. But the only real difference, I think, in the 16 valve to the Williams is the torque, isn't it? Because it went from 1800 to 2 litres, and I think you felt that torque in a Williams, but otherwise there's not that much difference.
Still a great chassis, really
the essence
approachable.
of the experience is the same. They're just a little chuckable, buzzy. You have to work it quite hard, but they feel nicely put together, don't they? Everyone knocks Renaults for being flimsy, but it feels really tough and solid little car.
Yeah,
but they're all from an era where you still got sort of solid, well-built cars in the 90s, didn't you? Which is why they're standing the test of time today. Let's say maybe bodywork, but interiors and things are standing up, and I think it means as a sort of a toy purchase or an occasional purchase, they don't take 24 years to keep on the road and get going. And
one of the slightly painful bits was driving the S1 Elise, knowing that it's going to be taken apart and rebuilt by Analog Lease or Analog Automotive, because they supplied the car. And it was brilliant.
Yeah, it felt great, didn't it?
Really
it's like,
good.
No, don't take this one apart.
He picked it up for not much money as well.
Yeah.
It's high mileage, but that was pretty durable. It all felt where you wanted it to be, chassis and build quality and everything. It was a sweet thing.
I was again, you sort of log certain cars, and I do, I'm weird like that, but you can imagine how everything feels and how the car goes down the road. But the Elise, I was really surprised by. It's not quick in a from 0 to 100 in no time at all. But it just felt grunty and
energetic,
responsive, and it just picked up speed. And you had to keep reminding yourself: is this just the
standard
basic K series car? It made so much of what it had. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
It still stacks up today, doesn't it? If it came out today, you'd think it's a really sweet car.
Yeah.
Which stood out as either better than you remember or we remember from the day, or perhaps not as strong. I mean, they're all on paper incredibly strong cars, but as you said, the Elise as a basic model, it went on to be evolved with more power, more track orientated specs and things. And obviously the 911 went on to do what it did.
I think 996, you appreciate how big a step change it was, because 3.2 Carrera to 964 to 993, they changed. There's quite a lot of changes, but in essence, there's quite a lot of similarities, I think, in how they drive. And then you had this complete sort of sweep all of that away and start again with this completely different car. So it did feel much more modern in some senses, and you did appreciate how much of the old car you lost character-wise. Because at the time that car came out, I hadn't spent much time in air-cooled 911, so we'd done a lot of stuff with 993s, a performance car, but prior to that I was quite fresh to all 911s then, so it was just the next one to drive. But I think that was probably the one that's reminded me how different that car was when it came out.
I think the clear 16 valve was a real surprise. RB5.
Come on, that's got to be up there.
Not quite as much. It was great on the right road. It was really fluid and does all those things that a good Impreza does. It's quite mobile, but not
Nothing had changed
edgy
in my mind with that car at all. Like the steering's a little bit light and the steering wheel's a bit big. So it makes the car feel bigger than it actually is. But the engine's great, and it just has it's just up for it, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it does very ordinary things.
Yeah.
It's quite an ordinary car with extraordinary abilities when you take it to that place. But I think you get in some of those 90s cars, and like the Elise is pretty timeless, the interior and the guys spoke about that in the podcast, but the Impreza is very much a cheap.
Yeah,
the plastic's quite hard, and there's these funny little cubbies, and it's just a fairly cheap, basic Japanese four-door saloon, isn't it? But and you always came to those cars knowing that, but they were just so much more than that. Didn't really.
Yeah,
you weren't distracted by that at all, were you? Because of the way they drove and what they did.
But I think maybe if you're coming to those cars now if that was going to be like your nostalgia trip, or like a car that you're building a small collection of cars or whatever it is, it's much easier to jump in the Elise, and everything is special in that, or the Griff, everything, like the interior is really lovely in that, the wood veneer and leather, and you get back to the cars that were amazing because they were affordable and based on more ordinary cars. But actually, if you're going to have something that you want to have more of a classic car experience, those things seem they colour your judgment a little more. Certainly with me, I loved it, don't get me wrong, I loved the Impreza and I'd love to have one.
It's you notice that things have moved on.
I think it's the one that demonstrates how far.
I think we moan how cars are much heavier and they're much bigger and they're all this and they're all that, but actually when you settle into something now, it's so plush and comfortable and refined and heavily equipped with lots of things you completely take for granted now. A lot of stuff you never use, but cars did seem really quite basic.
Absolutely.
But that impressive turbo formula, wasn't it, of turbocharged four-wheel drive is now, that's all you get in a hot hatch in a small saloon, isn't it? It's interesting how back then it was still, you had Imprezas and Evos, but everything else was just front-wheel drive trying to keep up.
And going back to these cars, it reminds you that you only need 200 horsepower. The car weighs 1,200 odd kilos. It's a great power to weight ratio, and the car is smaller on the road, so it moves a bit on its tyres, but you've got that room to play with anyway because the car's narrow.
That RB5 that we had the performance pack on it, didn't it? So what were they?
247,
50,
yeah.
It's ample, isn't it?
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah,
I think everything seems quite well matched, and it's plenty quick enough. And I love the sense that I always used to love that, particularly on those roads actually, where you could just attack the road and not.
Yeah.
There are a couple of places where you needed to know where the big bumps and compressions were, but otherwise you could just absolutely hammer down it, and the car, like much the same way you were saying about the Valkyrie on the roads you were on. That's what Imprezas and Evos were always like on those really naggety, difficult roads, and it was just as good to drive.
Yeah,
very kind of free, but you're not doing
silly speed, are you? That's the thing.
No.
You're getting that sensation and engagement without having to draw attention to apart from the Ferrari by the sounds of it. But you're not having to do such big speeds to.
Even the Ferrari, it was always a bit of a standing joke, wasn't it? That they sound like they're doing 300 miles an hour and they're not actually going that quick. It's not. Yeah. It's a fastish car, but they're. Yeah. I think again, you think, was this was like quite a high level road car?
Yeah.
Back then, and now
we've driven a couple in the meantime though, and they never seem quite as quick as they did back in the day.
But the equivalent now, like the model. Line, 296 or a 488 or something, are just monstrously fast.
Yeah. But even a base Carrera is monstrously fast, isn't it?
Now,
it is.
Yeah, it has been for a couple of generations, hasn't it?
Yeah,
just that monster speed. It was interesting the three cars in that test were also the podium for the first car of the year. The 355, the Elise, and the 996 that took its first of many 911 crowns.
Absolutely.
But so is that the nine? I think when we were planning this, we were saying the 90s and the early noughties are possibly peak, without sounding all curmudgeonly, and it's all better in our day. But choosing those cars and the massive long list, and then the long list we've had for the noughties and 2000s that's just been done, any of those mixture of half a dozen cars would have been a standout test.
I mean, there's all the usual suspects as well. We could have had BMWs in there.
E39
we've had to try and be a little bit deliberately not ignore them, but otherwise you would just end up with the same 5 or 6 cars, or maybe with a wild card like a TVR or something in there.
Yeah, because we wanted to avoid, as you said, either the cars that we quite frequently, because they're iconic, they're the ones you naturally think of for a piece, And also to avoid that, look at us, we've got 25 cars from the 90s and give them all 70 words to talk about.
It just makes it, it's just massively unwieldy, and I think you lose the ability to go into any detail with the cars you've got. But it's becoming a really special thing to do, I think. It's like a whole lifetime's worth of cars that we're experiencing in
different ways.
5 different blocks of time.
And what's interesting, some of the cars that some people think, well, you should have had that. Why isn't that in the 90s? But actually, some of them are, without giving it away, are going to appear in later decades, because that's either when we think they're better or
some brands. It's more significant that they appear in different.
I think it's always hard, Peter. We always try to get a bunch of cars that centre around the kind of mid-decade, but you just can't do that all the time. And we have to play a little bit of a game, don't we? I think in upcoming decades, I think there'll be 1 or 2 that were officially kind of launched in 2008 or 9 or whatever, but they didn't get here until 2010, so we bump it into the next era. But we're just trying to strike a bit of a balance, aren't we, really? But
you weren't on this test, James, but these were cars that I guess when you were growing up were sort of in your world, in a printed world.
No, very much so. Well, first car magazine I bought was Performance Car. Excellent choice, obviously. And
is that after John had left?
What year would that be? Just to make me feel really old.
Which issue was it?
97.
That's really late.
Wow.
But it had a Subaru Impreza STI version 4 in it. And then one of my sort of big formative experiences just getting into cars at that age was got a passenger ride in one. It was sort of a friend of a family friend had one in North Wales, and completely blew my mind. Sort of took me out for a ride.
Very late, that STI 4 97.
It was a lightweight special. There was sort of a McLaren F1 in there and Lotus 7.
And was it on the cover with?
On the cover with
911 Club Sport. And the original Lotus 7, not a Caterham, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was shot at
Thruxton. Speed of Light, I think the cover line was for that. We had all sorts of stuff on that.
Yeah, that's when we were just getting on with doing what we wanted to do, because the publishers were about to pull the plug.
So I was reading about these cars, playing them on Gran Turismo, and dreaming of owning them and trying to sketch them and stuff. But so the Impreza was a big formative experience for me, and I was grew up with Conor McRae being a hero, and then the S1 Elise is a car I've wanted to own since I was a kid, and whatever the market value of S1 Elises is, it's always exactly slightly more than I've got to spend at a time. So it's still on my dream list now.
Just when you think, I can maybe afford. Oh no, I can't.
But no, so it was really fascinating to read this story and see it in print, because really I relived some of my early days of getting excited about cars. And
I think it's almost been like you get a few cars. I've certainly got some cars out of my system that you float around go back to looking at them and classifieds and stuff. Because you build up a bit of a groundswell of kind of, that'd be really good, that'd be really good. And then,
so you left where we did the final shot for the test. You left there looking up Griffiths, didn't you? Well,
I mean, I've had the hots for an Elise for a long time, but then you look at what you could get a Griff for versus what you could get a nice Elise for, and they're all uncomfortably close actually, because then for all the reasons we've gone into recently about Elises, I would love one, and there's very, very significant car, I think, in all the different cars I've driven. But I love that Griff so much, just as a thing that you'd have in the garage, knowing that you're never going to drive it as much as you want to. To look at it and start it up, and the noise and the sound and the way it drives, and totally different cars in what they set out to do and how they did it. But
would that be the car then? If I said pick one, that's the one you take.
I'm still grappling with that now. Like, would it be a Griff? Would it be an Elise? I don't know. I think whichever one you bought, you'd probably
want the other one.
The other.
That's
same
true.
for you.
I mean, Clio 16 valve again, wittering on about it, but it was, as a hot hatch, it was just brilliant. Proper experience, and at very modest speeds
and modest money, aren't they? Actually, if you can find one, or you could find a project and do it. I think that's been one of the nice things about these tests is some of the cars are really, really special, and they're not
silly money. No, that was another reason for doing it. Of not
and
having
the owner Darren, he brought his along. He spent a
Well, I think he's got
time.
2 or 3 that he's made one decent one out of, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And it's a continuing
It's a
process,
dedication to the cause.
But it's a lovely little car, really special little car.
But yeah, I'd still look at Elise's because I've got a V8 in the garage anyway. Well, somebody else's garage at the moment. Yeah. So I can scratch that itch. But yeah, Elise is always magic.
It's almost that placebo car, though, isn't it? Of you go back out, you drive it to clean all your palate cleansers.
Between courses.
Yeah,
it's
your sorbet of between.
That's it. Yeah,
your Land Rover Optas and
M5s. But it's also it's enough with 118 horsepower.
Yeah,
the weight of it is enough. It's a magic experience.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you to everyone who helped supply cars for that test and the ongoing ones as well that the guys are putting together. So thank you for that. And before we end, because you missed it the first time we introduced Evo's version of Desert Island Discs.
Okay.
He's still trying to work out what Desert Island Discs is.
He's still not searching on his own search engine using someone else's. 3 cars, 3 roads.
3 roads. Okay, I've done it twice. I'd do it again. Zonda on the road to the Val d'Orcia, Radicofani up to Sartiano. Background was just... I can't believe I managed to do it twice. Fantastic. The last time was in November, and we were diverted to Geneva because of fog, and we still arrived at Sartiano. We came around a bend on the A1, and the sun just came out. It was just unbelievable.
So you're getting greedy, you want to do it for a third time?
I want to do it for a third time. Second one would be probably a Caterham Superlight on the B660, because I rented a house halfway along the B660. There was a sort of slip road onto the B660, which I used to take every day, and a Superlight, 130 odd horsepower, Caterham 7, to go to what was the office in Peterborough, Performance Car Magazine. That would be great. And the third one, I'm going to cheat, because you just sprung this on me.
You've had at least an hour to think about it.
The third public road I would choose is the Nürburgring.
I think we banned that, didn't we?
Well, you didn't. I wasn't here.
It's a one-way public toll road without a speed limit.
Absolutely, and that would be a GT3 997, GT3 or GT3 RS. I don't mind which one.
You're not fussy.
You're not fussy. Green,
with a
orange.
limitless card, like a season ticket or something.
Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Cheat.
And limitless tyres as well.
Well, your new Michelin's.
Yeah.
If they fitted.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Nice choices.
Yeah, good choice.
Very nice.
If you had to pick one, which one?
That'd be the Zonda again. Fantastic. Just because the catering's better when you stop.
I mean, you don't want to steak on a stone every time you come round. Yeah, you've got every lap you do, you've got to pop in for a steak on a stone.
Or a currywurst.
Yeah.
Or if it's B660, it'd be a Little Chef or something, wouldn't it, back in the day?
You're showing your age, Little Chef, John.
Yeah, Little Chef. Ask your mum.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for those who have been sharing your 3 cars, 3 rows. We will do an episode where we sort of go through those. We won't rank them, that's unfair. I think it's probably a good place to end.
Yeah.
So,
thanks,
Dickie, James, John,
you.
thank you very much.
Thank you
all for listening. If you want to join us at a track day, trackdaysevo.co. Just go to evo.co. They've confused us with our track days website. So just go to the website.
I think Yoda wrote the domain address.
I don't know. Chat GTP probably. So join us at a track day, and we will see you next time. Thank you.